Hello, everybody, and we are back. This is 3D6 Charge, a podcast about competitive Warhammer 40k, the state of the gaming community news. I'm your host, Chris Vo, and joining me tonight is Kevin Lieb.
Howdy, howdy.
And Benjamin Rubenstein.
Hello, everyone.
All right, so yeah, we're coming back. We have went on hiatus a bit over the holidays. Usually a slow time, and we do this show weekly. It's the time we really have off. So, I hope everybody got a nice, had a nice holiday, had some time to relax and try to think of new armies, new playstyles you want to see. Maybe chew on some of the new rules that came out, during that time. I know myself, I am now sitting on a bit of a hobby backlog model-wise with Abaddon, 10 Terminators, Karn, and some Noise Marines. And I can't really do anything about that because I also got a commission to paint 20 Black Templars, and I'm not done with that yet. How about you guys?
I've been kind of on a Necron tear. I think since the last podcast, I've gotten Illuminor Sideris, 2 Catacomb Command Barges, 1 Ghost Ark, 40 Necron Warriors, and some other random stuff. And the big boy.
Oh, the Seraptech?
Yeah.
That thing would scare me with all of its spindly bits and being made out of resin. It feels like those Tyranid Bio-Titans where it just feels like all of that weight's going to snap right at the joint.
It just looks so ready to snap.
Yeah.
It was a bit of a process to get those legs ready to go.
I have been painting Thousand Suns things with legs. I got a Leviathan Dreadnought I finished up. It's my first model of the new year. Pretty happy with that. Spent a lot of time on that one. I just put a lot of detail into that. And then I also got a couple Contemptor Dreadnoughts with plasma cannons and rocket launchers because the model is beautiful. I used the Assyrian Dreadnought because that model is insane. And I'm working a couple other Thousand Sun things, and I've been building Gene Stealer cults, but I haven't actually started yet.
Yeah, I am looking to get into Gene Stealers myself. If only because I found a model that combines Skaven with Gene Stealers, and he calls it the Cheese Stealers, and it looks fucking hilarious to me, and it's basically going to be a theme of that army, regardless of whether or not they're actually going to be meta or not. But we can touch on that a little bit later. But yeah, between all of that stuff happening, I think one piece of news that kind of took everybody by surprise and had an impact on the community was the Tau Railgun leak or teaser.
Yeah. Man, we were off that week, which was kind of disappointing because we could have spent the entire podcast talking about that gun. The way the community was just completely losing their minds over it.
It was all doom and gloom.
So if you've been, living off the grid and you've returned to the grid only for this podcast, we really appreciate it. But also, the stats on our railgun is 60 inches, 1 attack, strength 14, AP 6, D3 plus 6 damage, 3 mortal wounds on a successful wound roll, and you can't take invulnerable saves against it. Which means that with its AP6 just means if it wounds you, you're just taking something between 10 and 12 damage.
Yeah, it's pretty disgusting.
Yeah, and the internet has lost its mind. It has declared Tau to be the most broken codex ever, and completely unbeatable.
Yeah, because I look at my 3 Lords Discordant, and I'm like, all right, I guess I can just throw these in the fucking garbage now. Because if they're ever out on the table within line of sight of the railgun, they're just dead.
So here's the thing. I think that profile is very good if like the entire meta is just dreadnoughts and things of that ilk. You're gonna start seeing those pull out like make their way into Tau lists. My guess is that like against most lists, you don't actually want that gun, or there are some lists where you just like wouldn't want to actually bring that weapon.
Yeah, like I don't play against this. You're just like, haha, your rhino's super dead. You only ever see rhinos after everything gets out of it. Like they hide the rhino behind a building, everything comes flying out of the rhino. Now it's an empty box that has a bolter on it, whatever. Now dread knights are in trouble, but not really. Because here's the whole thing. I think the thing that the internet's really missing on this spoiler. This is a toughness 7 tank with no invulnerable save, and like something between it has 13 wounds right now. It might keep that, which is like a little high for a tank, I guess. But like, man, 13 wounds, no invulnerable save. Yeah, this gun just kills anything it points at. But like, this like 2 las cannons or like 3 las cannons is like the same killing power against a hammerhead that a hammerhead has against another tank. So like all of the guns that normal tanks are packing can kill a hammerhead just as fast as a hammerhead can kill another tank. So in terms of like the hammerhead versus another tank shootout, it's just whoever shoots first. And like, I don't know if that's like game breaking. I don't feel like that's game breaking. Like, yeah, if my tank shoots first, it kills you. If your tank shoots first, it kills me.
At face value, it seems super, super powerful. But then you look at it against like things that are currently like running amok in the meta, like say like Tyranid Hive Guard. If that railgun shoots at the Hive Guard, it kills 1 Hive Guard.
2.
It kills 2.
Does it kill 2?
Mortal wounds.
Oh yeah, the mortal wounds.
It
kills 2. But like,
yeah, but the Hive Guard just don't even need to come out and they can kill it from behind a building in 1 round of shooting.
Yeah. I forget. Do hammerheads have fly?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Will they in the future? Who knows?
Yeah, like it's a hover tank. Hover tanks have been losing fly left and right. So who knows? Yeah, having your ability to turn off invulnerable saves is very good. The fact that you are putting this on a very squishy platform that's like not particularly cheap. Like I can't imagine a hammerhead gets cheaper. And a hammerhead with nothing else right now is 140 points. And that is a bad loadout because that loadout gives you literally nothing else to do. It gives you some like 18-inch anti-infantry guns. You're probably going to like be spending up to like 160 on these things to put smart missiles on them. And like they die in 1 hit. Like you have to just hope your opponent has put something on their list that like their railgun just trades up into.
That's the thing.
Now, like there's definitely a meta where like railguns are excellent.
It's scary, but you have to trade up with it, otherwise, big paper.
Yeah, like there's metas where railguns are excellent, but if Tau are good, it's not because of railgun. Like this thing is not going to single-handedly make the Tau Codex broken. There could certainly be positive things in it. But like if you told me right now today I was allowed to play with the current Hammerhead railgun profile in the purportedly very bad 8th edition Tau Codex, I'd bring 1. Like I think I just want 1.
I think that
I don't want the second one, and like that right there just makes you think like, yeah, this gun's fine. Like we'll play with it for sure. It will see play. It plays a role. The ability to just like point at a Leviathan Dreadnought and be like, yeah, take like 90% of that thing's wounds away. Like that's great, but I don't think it's the doom and gloom, the world is over thing that the internet is saying, because at the same time, if like then like the contemptor next to that Leviathan just like kills the hammer. It has no armor. It has a bad armor. Like has a 3-up armor save.
Yeah, I think the railgun. The issue with the railgun isn't so much that like it's going to ruin the meta or even like be something that you take 3 of. But I do think that it's going to be something that does help shape the meta, because like if for some reason, Lords Discordant are still good when the Chaos Codex comes out, I'm still going to be very wary about taking them because they're hard to hide, and a railgun's going to take one out in one go, or a Contemptor is going to, be able to probably eat it on one shot from the railgun. It might just affect other people's unit choices, kind of like how the Wrath of Magnus secondary had a lot of people start looking to taking out their lone psyker.
Yeah. Yeah. The I think that was probably more people wanting to take a Poor the Witch against Grey Knights, and Wrath of Magnus just was a secondary casualty of that. There are certainly units that like will be sad about this. Like there are units that have very good invulnerable saves that rely on them that are just like expensive. This is basically putting the death knell into anything other than an Iron Hands player wanting to take a quad las cannon Contempt or Dread, because it's going to feel really bad when you lose your 200-point model to one shot from a railgun. And I think the big thing is now is just like, if this is a thing that people are playing, you just have to keep in mind that if you are going to bring multiple platforms that are weak, if you bring one platform that's weak to this, it's fine. Like in that matchup, you'll lose that platform once it pokes its head out to the hammerhead, and like then you keep playing the game. If you want to make multiple, you just need to have also a platform that can just like reach out and kill a hammerhead. And I think every army in the game has something that checks that box. I can't think of an army in the game that can't just like reach out and just like pick up a hammerhead. It's not hard to do. Now things that if next week they go, by the way, broadside railguns also ignore invulnerable saves, we can have a very different conversation. But for now, I think
it's I think it's going to be meta dependent. That's where I hope the gun ends up. I hope it's like oh, you fouled out, you brought too many of X kind of gun. Like, I mean, that'll feel bad in its own right, but like, I just hope it's not like so good that you just always take it. Because like, if you tell me it has that profile and for somehow it goes down to like 120 points, we have an issue. Because I think it's not that bad in its bad matchups, especially when you think about like Mortal Wound spreading out.
Yeah. I wouldn't be shocked if like Long Strike ends up becoming a must include, or if most lists just were like, we bring one hammerhead. But yeah, if it's like 120 points and like everyone's just bringing 3 or 4, because you can bring 4 because Long Strike's a named one, then it becomes an issue.
Yeah.
But like for now, I just don't think it's a big deal.
I think people just saw like the +6 damage, and then we're just like, this is.
They saw the no invulnerable save. Like we've had guns that like Volcano Lances do way more damage than railgun, but you're allowed to make saves against them. You just don't get to do that against railguns. Like you have to be, I believe, you have to be a Terminator with a Storm Shield in cover, and then you get a 6-up. That's not that's not reliable at all. Plus Tau ignore cover like 5 different ways.
Yeah. Meanwhile, all Necron players are in shambles, so all their weapons being D6 damage.
Yeah, I've had this
conversation. There's a little bit of a narrative problem with that. Like,
I've had this conversation with like a million Necron players though. Like the strength of their anti-tank tank platforms isn't that like they have infinite damage. It's that you can't kill them. Like a hammerhead loses a shootout with a Doomsday Arc in like a really embarrassing way. Like, oh, you're transhuman, and then I die. Okay.
Awkward. Also, you don't one-shot it.
Yeah, like it has one too many wounds to one shot. It heals. It's transhuman, so you miss half the time on your wound roll. It's very ugly, and then you don't get a save and you die instantly. Some other Tau spoilers.
140 more points than the other, so that's like not a.
Yeah. There's some other Tau leaks on like weapon profiles and things. There's certainly some speculation as to what some new weapon systems are going to do, but I think we'll probably wait till we see a couple more things before we dive into that. So shall we move on?
Yep.
All right.
The other big thing that happened in our break before we get to Custodes is Tyranids kind of came into their own with Octarius. They had like a defined list. We had kind of talked about it a little bit before we had left. And then, lo and behold, we got more powerful Tyranid rules in the form of Crusher Stampede. I've been looking at some of the recent results, and it's like Crusher Stampede is kind of turning out to be the truth.
I fucking love Crusher Stampede.
It's very anti-meta. Like, it's just not the thing that people are prepared for. Like, the meta is a bunch of tough infantry or fast infantry. And you're like, all right, here's a bunch of monsters with invulnerable saves and damage penalties. They're all fast, and they're all shooting las cannons for their melee attacks. Good luck.
Yeah, I just think it's really wild. Do we have any idea when the NID Codex is coming out though?
No idea.
So they spoiled in their like models coming out in 2022 video that there's a NID model coming out. So it's this year.
Yeah, because there's no way they're gonna release a new NID model after how many years without tying it into.
Absolutely.
Excuse me while I cry in Chaos Demons.
Slanesh.
I'm about to just take all of my chaos.
Yeah,
demons
got a bunch
to
of new
Sigmar.
models, and they weren't attached to the Codex.
AOS.
Oh, I guess.
When you buy demon models, they come in an AOS box. They do not come in a 40k box. I don't know.
Yeah, no. Every time I go to the game store and I go to buy chaos demons, I have to go to like the other corner where it's all Sigmar stuff.
I do like how Battlegrounds, a local store for us, they literally have a little thing that says, "Looking for demons? Go to our AOS section."
Yeah, there's an actual like post-it note. Not a post-it note. It's a little nicer than that, but yeah, that sign is there. It's great.
Needless to say that I like a lot of what the Crusher Stampede did. I wish it was more restricted to things actually in the Tyranid Codex. I think the fact that it applies to as much Forge World stuff as it does is like not great, because the Forge World stuff was by far the most competitive Tyranid stuff. Don't get me wrong, I don't want Forge World to be completely unplayable, but I don't want it to be the only choice. And when you told me that Crushing Stampede is making monsters playable, I was kind of hoping it would be more of the classic monsters, not the Forge World stuff.
I've not looked at any of those results. I assume it's a bunch of higher duels, because that's what came out to me as like, that's terrifying when the Crusher Stampede was spoiled.
Demacrons are back.
Okay.
Turns out when you get a 5-up Fill No Pain due to the special effects of a Demacron, and now you're -1 damage taking 5-up Fill No Pain, like this is just a recipe for just like not dying.
Also, you count as 18 models.
I think the Macrons are only 14 wins.
No, they're
Hide
18.
behind buildings. That's higher duels.
Oh.
The Macrons are the guys who can move through buildings because they jump. And then the big deal there is that they can like run out, kill you, and then run back behind a building, and then they're invisible. Yeah, we'll definitely see how that develops. I'm like a little scared about these rules still being around with a new Tyranid Codex comes out, because that could be a lot.
I think if there's like a day one emergency FAQ, however that works with a White Dwarf, that stratagem that does mortal wounds on the charge needs to get capped to like 3. It's like hard.
Oh yeah,
we're about to talk about Custodes, but I can't actually think about a Custodes list existing when the Tyranid list exists as it does.
Yeah, every charge phase you lose 6 mortal wounds. Like, gets 1 CP.
It's fucking
you
wild.
just do 6 mortal wounds every time they charge.
It is pretty wild. The only thing that gives me pause about like buying into Crusher Stampede, like coming from the viewpoint of like, all right, I would like to start a Xenos army. This seems really cool. I always wanted to play like Nidzilla. You know, the thing that gives me a little bit of hesitation on this is that it came out in a White Dwarf, which is like one of those type of things where it's like, yeah, we know your Codex isn't coming out for a while, so like here's this quick thing to hold you over, and then when the rules go away, you know, when the Codex releases, you won't feel bad because it costs you $3.
Yeah, they're definitely more likely to put holdover rules in White Dwarf that just go away. That being said, Chris, despite all these sweet Tyranid rules coming out, I have not really felt like playing Tyranids, so if you're interested in buying my collection.
Welcome to Kevin's friend group, in which he attempts to sell you his Tyranids every 20 minutes or so.
Yep.
I almost fell into that trap. Then I grabbed his GSC instead. Very happy about. So I think we should mention real quick, like, I quick predictions, GSC and Custodes, what they do to the meta, and then we're going to let Kevin talk about Custodes at length. So I'm going to start off with my Custodes prediction. I think Kevin's right. I think Custodes, well, first of all, I think Custodes are good. Like, the new Codex seems very strong. They definitely lost some strength on vehicles and things like that, but the foot guys got so much better that there's definitely like something there. At the same time, if the Crusher Stampede is going to apply 6 mortal wounds every time it declares a charge, they're never winning a GT. Like they'll do well until they hit like Thousand Suns or a Crusher Stampede list, and then they'll completely fall flat, which is unfortunate. But
so I am going to talk about one list that actually takes the faction as the 4 Filno pin against mortal wounds.
I actually don't think you're losing the Thousand Suns because of the mortal wound output. I think you're losing the Thousand Suns because they just turn your invulnerable saves off.
Custodes have always been weak to mortal wounds. I think the Filno pain matters. It also does help on the like they just charge in and do a bunch of mortal wounds to you scenario.
Yep.
Anyway.
And then real quick about GSC, that book seems really good. Again, I don't know if it's like breaking into the top, but I think that it's going to wildly shake up the meta. I think it's going to shake up the meta a lot more than Custodes, because while we do have a new Custode book, the old Custode book was certainly competitive, and it's not like their stat lines have changed wildly. Like, there's still just a bunch of toughness 5 dudes with 2 upper armor, and the weapons that you need to be able to fight that are the same. The 3 up immortal save is gone, spoiler alert, but that doesn't wildly change what sorts of guns you want to be taking against Custodes. So I don't know that they're like going to wildly shake up the meta, but GSC has gone from functionally unplayable to like a very good codex that plays extremely differently from everything else. So I expect GSC to, if not define the meta, certainly alter it in an appreciable way.
I actually think Custodes somehow got worse with their codex.
That's sorry, go ahead.
Which is sad.
Yeah. I don't think it's disastrous because they were one of the best armies. And I don't think they got way worse, but it is certainly possible that they got worse. I think they got better, but it's all by margins of degrees. Like, I don't think they got like 20% better. I think they are slightly better than they were. Do you think they're way worse?
I actually think their infantry losing the 3 up invulns does actually significantly knock down where they are.
Okay, that's fair.
Because we've all played against 3 up invulns. We know how powerful that is. We know how swingy it can be. And a lot of guns are going to 3 damage to try to combat all the -1 damage in the meta.
Every failed save is a guy you lose.
Yeah. And then along the same lines, all their weapons are 2 damage. Like, I know we've hit on this before, but like they kind of wish they kept some of their D3 damage. Like all their infantry's weapons just are so sad into the world of -1 damage, and like it feels like every army, half their models are -1 damage these days, or 1 wound.
That is fair, actually. I wasn't really thinking about that. Yeah, all the guns. Yeah, it's actually 2 damage to all the guns and all the melee weapons, right? So actually, all of them.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. No, maybe they did need the vehicles.
So let's not be overly doom and gloom, though. If there's one thing I can say about the book, I think well, you might want to be seeing them winning tournaments. I think you're going to have a lot of fun playing them. I think they're a lot more interesting than they were 2 weeks ago. Well, I mean, I guess technically they're not there yet, but I have all the rules, so it feels like they're there. So what are the 2 main things that Custodes got out of this? They got Katas? Yeah.
They got the Tau apostrophe, and I want it back.
And they essentially got chapter tactics. So let's hit with the chapter tactics first. There are 5 named shield hosts and 1 generic shield host. And then each one of those has a kata that they specialize in. The So first off, we have
So what are the good ones? What are the ones you think might see play?
so Solar Watch. Solar Watch is all about mobility. So you take slow guys, make them faster. That's obviously going to get you into a good place. They get +1 to advance and charge, and they can fall back and charge.
Okay.
No.
Oh, that's really fast, huh? And correct me if I'm wrong. There's a way of advancing and charging now, right?
Yes, they have it. They're the only faction with it. It's a warlord trait that you pick a unit in the beginning of the combat, so beginning of the charge phase, and if they advance this turn, they can still charge.
Is it core unit or any unit?
Core.
Okay. Our jet bike's core.
Yes.
Oh, gross. That's disgusting.
Next up, I think my favorite is actually the generic host. It's you get a 4 Philopane, and every time the unit goes to shoot, they get to reroll a hit or a wound. Custodes have always been a low unit count, high quality army, so that those rerolls are more valuable in Custodes than other factions.
Yeah, those kind of
Always
rerolls
been
were
like-
already good when you were salamanders, and now when you're getting lower quantity, higher quality, it's even more valuable.
And correct me if I'm wrong, with the jet bike like laser cannon things, or are they missiles? Or like
They're missiles.
yeah,
They're
like,
melta missiles.
sure. They're like D3 plus 3 damage, right?
Yes.
So they're just like the best missiles you could ever be rerolling on.
Yes.
All right.
Well, it's actually kind of funny. They used to reroll natively, and that just went away. But they went from
And now you
D6
can-
damage to D3 plus 3 damage. So
So now you've more than doubled your damage output, and you can kind of just keep your rerolls if you play this faction because they're like what, strength 8, so you're winning most things on 3s anyway.
Yep.
All right, I'm in.
And then I don't think it's necessarily the best faction, but it's the faction I'm gonna try playing myself, and that is the Aquilin Shield. So they get 1 AP is 0 AP, and
Ooh.
all of their core can heroically intervene. And that's actually incredibly powerful in Custodes because they have a 1 CP stratagem of heroically intervene with a core character. And if that core character can already heroically intervene, it's instead a 6-inch heroic intervention. So essentially,
So this faction just has 2 strats.
yeah.
Sweet. What's your other strat? Is any good?
Pick a unit, your entire army bodyguards that unit.
A unit, not a.
Sorry, character.
Oh, okay. Like yikes! These 9 bikes untargetable. Okay, that's still pretty good though.
Especially so when you're building Custodes, you can include Custodes. You can include some number of sisters, less than any Custode in the given slot.
This is Sisters of Silence, right?
Sisters of Silence, yeah. Agents of the Imperium and Assassins. Or I guess Assassins are agents of Imperium. I was thinking Inquisition.
Inquisition Assassin.
So there are. It's hard to use that strat super well because there's so little sweet things you can put in those slots. Like there's no like Gilliman, there's no Imperial Knight you can just like slot in because then you're losing your karate form.
My apostrophe.
One of the things I like about this faction, I like the way it interacts with dreadnoughts. So a lot of their dreadnoughts are strength 7, and Solar Watch. Sorry, not Solar Watch. Shadow Spears, Shadow Keepers, Shadow Keepers. Their strat of -1 strength on gun shooting in still exists, but it no longer works on vehicles. So a lot of times you would see them with these vehicles as like that would be a way of like making their vehicles extremely tough, but that doesn't work anymore. But at strength 7, there's a lot of AP 4 1 AP, strength 4 1 AP or strength 5 1 AP out there. There's not infinite, but there's enough that that is actually a notable bump, and like you're just not going to get like plinked down randomly. And that's what happens to a lot of T7 vehicles. Like that's your anti-infantry guns can kind of just like shoot up a little bit, and this prevents that from happening.
Yeah, that seems pretty good. And I apologize. So is everyone can heroically intervene and you ignore AP1?
You ignore AP1.
Yeah, that seems pretty strong.
Oh, and
Go ahead.
Warlord Trait and Relic. So the Warlord Trait take half damage. Not -1 damage, take half damage. And then their Relic is -1 to be wounded.
Oh, geez. So you just have like a bike captain that's just like immortal.
Yep. And you can still give them the Warlord Trait of a 5 of field open. And you can double Warlord Trait a character.
So you could take a bike captain and be like 5 out feeling pain, half damage, -1 to be wounded, and then reroll hits and wounds of 1 on the charge because that's like a captain commander upgrade.
Yep.
And then you just throw him at your opponent and you're like, I don't know, kill him with your entire army, I guess. Maybe you'll get there, maybe you won't.
Yeah, so while you can do that with a bike captain, I actually think we're more on Terminator captains these days.
Okay.
One of the big hits to Custodes is all of their infantry is OBSEC, so including their characters, but just their infantry is OBSEC. So bikes used to be OBSEC, and they're no longer OBSEC. So I like a Terminator captain or a foot captain a lot more for this now. You're gonna have to spend one more time getting in there, but like when you're in there, you're an OBSEC thing in there as opposed to a non-OBSEC thing that's kind of an ignorable.
Okay. I do like this change, if only because it kind of felt like the fact that the bikes were OBSEC really just gated what GW could do with them, both points and tricks wise. Like anything that can move 20 inches and has OBSEC, there's just not that much you can do with it. It's so dangerous to the game. You just can't make it cheap. It always has to be overcosted. Just because of that utility, not even anything else that's on the datasheet. And now you can get a little looser with perhaps bringing their points down or giving them some sweet tricks.
So moving on to the other thing that Custodes get, and that's the katas. So there are 6 katas. One matches up with each of the factions subtraits. And the way it works is there's kind of 2 forms of each of them. And when you go to activate the form for the first time, you need to pick which one is active. Next turn, you can either pick the opposite one, or you can go on to your next form and pick either of the 2 there. You get to pick 3 form katas, and you have to declare what order they're in at the beginning of the game.
So it's like command protocols.
It's like command protocols, but
it's a little bit more options in there, though, right? Because you can just be like, oh, I picked this aggressive one for turn 2, or as a second one, but my opponent was played very conservatively, so I'm just gonna like stay on my defensive one that I picked earlier.
Yep.
Okay, that's sweet.
The bonus you get for building mono shield host is when your special one comes up, once per game you can say both are active, even if the other one has already been active. One of the forms has already been active, or the first time you would activate the form, you get both.
Okay.
Yeah. So for the most part, these are mainly aggressive or utility. There's not defensive.
Okay.
So first one's first is Callistus. You can roll 2 dice when advancing and drop the lowest. And when you advance or normal move, you're counted as standing still for the purposes of shooting. It's worth noting that bikes have the access to these, so bikes can advance 20 inches and fire their missiles that are normally heavy weapons because they're standing still. It lets you play some angles.
I look forward to having bikes move 20 inches behind all my characters and then evaporate them with D3+3 damage weapons.
Yeah. going to be the best of times.
In more seriousness, it's good that Custodes have tricks, because it used to kind of feel like the decision my opponent was making was how to spend their command points, because you're going to march your slow models slowly at me and shoot your vehicle guns. And now they're just like, man, that's a lot of mobility.
Yes. Next up, we have God, I don't know how to spell this name. Dirachi.
Just say what it's based on.
So this is one of the utility ones. So when your opponent, it can make it so that when your opponent piles in or consolidates, they can only pile in 1 inch or 2 less inches. If it was 4, it would go down to 2. And when the unit goes to make an attack, your unit goes to make an attack, you can choose to get an extra attack, but your weapons go down to damage 1. It's actually funny, in the world of -1 damage, this might just say +1 attack a lot of the time with no downside.
That's true.
Yeah.
All I can think about this one is like, this is the anti-GSC one, because GSC is often like barely making their charges that have deep strike, and then you're like, all right, can't pile in. You got like the first heroes in, I guess, and a lot of guys there in the back just like not swinging. Man, that really gums up combat for your opponent.
Yeah.
I guess it's more aggressive. You can, because depending on how your opponent's models are set up, if you're charging them, that's actually, this is aggressive, right? You charge them, and then like, depending on how you touch them, because you're like 3-man squads, they're just like not swinging back. Like even like very deadly combat units are just gonna like not be that strong when only like 3 other dudes can fight.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's not increasing their offensive capability. I mean, +1 attack is increasing their offensive capability, but it's not like a crazy buff.
Yeah, I meant more like, it is better when you are the person declaring the charges, because you could just catch units just totally not organized in the way to do combat, because usually you organize to like cover distance to like keep your opponent screened out, because the way pylons work is that everyone gets to fight until it doesn't.
Yeah. Next up, we have Salvas. Now, Salvas, it has 2 parts, and it's most interested in seeing how Forge World goes. The first one is all of their guns are increased by 4 inches, minus, I think, like the grenade launcher or something. Or you can double shoot with your auric weapons. Now, what's an auric weapon, you might say? It's essentially any bestowed weapon that is part bolter, part melee weapon. So their spears, their axes, their swords, or relic versions of those.
So which weapons benefit most from like the +4 inches?
The sword guns, I think, are short or strange.
Melta spears, probably. Right?
Melta spears, yeah.
The flamers on a sorry, go ahead.
Forge Road Melta spears actually get really good with it.
I was going to say the flamers on a Galatis Dreadnought.
Dreadnoughts, we can infer this from the Venerable Contemptor Dreadnought in the book. Do not know karate, so.
Oh, never mind.
Or do not have access to these abilities, so they're not going to get the +4 inches.
Never mind.
But weapons that could be considered auric weapons, the flame pikes that Chris was just mentioning, which are essentially Melta spears that you put on your custodian guard. Or Venatari actually have a spear option. You never see it. But if that spear option becomes auric weapons, then you're not getting 6s to explode, but you are essentially getting the same, and you're also losing 6 inches on your gun range, but you are essentially keeping the double tap Venatari that we used to have with better melee.
And then and then one of the factions is like a shooty faction that could presumably cycle through this twice.
That is actually the Aquilian Shield, the one I was talking about.
Ah. That's really good. All right.
So I'm gonna present a list a little bit later on, but let's just say that if Venatari end up getting access to double tapping with this, the list will be making some changes.
Yeah, what's the maximum Revenatari you can bring?
18, I believe their 6-man cap.
Right, but like, is that 2,000 points? They're bringing HQ somewhere.
I believe Venatari are like.
I'm making a joke. I know that Custodes are expensive. They're not that expensive.
I mean, you're not that far.
So, let's talk about stratagems a little bit. The one that I saw that I just kind of looked for was Tanglefoot Grenade. It's still around. It got a little bit worse because you can only use it once per turn, so you can there's no more nerf your movement, nerf your charge. You can just nerf one, which certainly is a nerf, but it's such an insane stratagem that like it's not a big deal. Like it's fine. It got a little bit worse, but it's still just like an insane stratagem to have access to. So I think a lot of the Custodes players I know were just like, there's no way that Tanglefoot makes it into the new book because it's so stupid. People hate playing against it, and it's very powerful. And that's like all of the things that makes GW remove things from books. And then they just, here it is, Tanglefoot Grenade, just turn off charges.
I'm kind of surprised it's not just like a flat -2. Like, I'm surprised it's still like a D6.
Yeah, D6 is gross because sometimes it's just like, I'm going to charge at a Deep Strike. You're like, and you roll a 4, and you're like, nope.
No, you were not. Try
no matter
again.
how good you are charging. I rolled a 6. You will not make it in.
Unless you're using the calls. Hey.
I don't think with a 6. I don't think you're making it in.
So. Oh, with a 6 now.
Other things that came over from their last edition, Emperor's Auspex, which is it's 1 CP if you're 3 or less models and 2 CP otherwise. And it says you cannot have gunshots rerolled against you, hits, wounds, or damage rerolled against this unit.
Does it hit damage now?
I believe so. I thought it always hit damage.
It used to just be hits and wounds. But I know the gut number of shots got added to it, which is amazing. And then also the fact that it's now cheaper for small units is also really good because it used to just be 2 CP all the time, right?
It used to be 2 CP all the time.
And as far as we can tell, this works on vehicles, right?
Yes.
So it's just one. It's the cheaper cost for vehicles, right? Is it?
So it's 1 CP for vehicles.
1 CP for vehicles because vehicles are only.
Vehicles
are less than 3 models. Yeah. And I see nothing about core 2. So if you were to bring like a Caladius, you'd still do it on that.
That seems kind of really good. Not on the Caladius, but like on some of the other stuff.
Yeah.
I think the Day of the Caladius is a little bit behind us with the new version of the book.
Yeah,
I wouldn't be shocked if we see like a Caladius with the anti-tank gun. Because the anti-tank gun rerolls wounds against tanks anyway, so the fact that you've lost some of the rerolls from Trajan isn't a big deal.
Right.
But I don't think we're seeing the days of like, here's 3 Caladius grab tanks are behind us. I still think I like one though, right? Because there's the faction with like the 1 reroll to hit, 1 reroll to wound. Because you can take the one with the anti-tank shots that reroll wound rolls against vehicles anyway, and then you're rerolling a hit roll and basically getting full rerolls, and you don't even need a babysitter.
Yeah, I like that a lot actually. So you're not really like, you're getting more points efficiency out of it, and you're not wasting it's probably gonna have to be an HQ slot.
Because I feel like the one place Custodes is lacking is like long range anti-tank, and that gun just murders tanks. Speaking of trading with hammerheads.
Yeah, what about it with the Telemon? Because the Telemon also can take that same gun.
I did not know that.
It costs 15 points on the Telemon. But like if you're taking that faction,
Telemon still we get the salamander rerolls.
yeah.
All right. I haven't
I'm
talked
in
to
on
you
it.
before the podcast. I thought Telemons were just dead, but you've sold me a little bit more on them. Doesn't the Caladius have two of that gun, or is it just like actually the same thing on the Telemon and the Caladius?
I don't know that off the top of my head. I'd have to look it up, unfortunately.
That's fair. But anyways, sorry, I've set us off track. Let's Emperor's Auspice is just better. Like this strat just got better, which is wild because this strat was one of the best ones. Right? Like the strat's just more powerful than it used to be.
That's my impression. That's what I'm getting out of this.
Wow. All right.
Sorry.
Wow. That's really exciting.
A little birdie is informing me that I might have been wrong about Telemon's having the same gun as the Caladius.
Unfortunate, but understandable.
Yes.
But all right, I'm still in on like a Caladius with like the anti-tank guns, depending on the meta, because obviously you don't want to bring a bunch of mega las cannons if the meta is 1000 toughness 3 Genius Zero cult models, but there'll always be vehicles out there. You know, it's just like drive your Caladius into them. Fine. Anyway, any other standout strats that are worth talking about?
I liked the change to man, I can't remember its name now. They used to have a strat that when you lost models, you could get extra attacks per that battle round. And now it's if when you go to make an attack with a unit, if you've lost any models in the unit, you get an extra attack. And if your unit is at half strength, you get 2 extra attacks.
Okay.
It makes 4 an interesting breakpoint for certain Custode units. Because like losing 2 guys, but then when they get into combat, they're effectively fighting at full strength.
Are they fighting at full? I thought Custodes are like 5 attacks each or 4.
3.
3 attacks each, and they get +2 per. Yeah, okay, it's close.
Yeah, it's not exactly full strength, but like 1 CP to get what would that be? 86% efficiency. As though you hadn't lost anyone is pretty good.
Yeah.
So worth noting, not what they've gained, but what they've lost. They no longer have swooping dive.
That one, I'm not shocked. This doesn't really surprise me.
I'm sure every Custodes player is sorely disappointed.
It was a boogeyman for a while, but like I haven't actually seen like a biker unit that wasn't a captain in like over a year. Like maybe that's just the Custode players I'm playing against, but the bikes kind of just seem like they're out. Like it's just all like sometimes there's a bike captain, but that's kind of it.
Yeah. Moving on to relics, and there's a few standouts here. So the Praetorian Plate. So the Praetorian Plate was always a meme. Last book, you would select a character, and when your opponent got into combo with that character, the person with the Praetorian Plate could like teleport over. What if it didn't have to be a character that you selected anymore? What if it could just be your opponent got into combat, and now your Terminator captain is just heroically intervening across the board into combat?
This seems good.
Yes.
This is what's his name? The Sanguinor all over again.
Yep.
But tougher? Question mark? I guess
you can do it past turn 4, not past turn 3.
Oh man, and also
you can do it turn 1 if
you
that
can like
matters.
completely customize the guy to like kind of do whatever you need to do.
The first combo that comes to mind, so I didn't mention it earlier. Custodes all count as 2 models for the purposes of holding objectives. There's a Warlord trait to make your character an additional 2 models for the purposes of this, and as a Terminator captain, you have OBSEC, so you can just be like, surprised there's 4 OBSEC bodies here, right now, with
like
8
in
wounds.
this combat?
With 8 wounds and toughness 6. because this relic, in addition to heroic convenience across the board, also gives you +1 toughness because it wasn't good enough with that first amount of attacks.
The extra you kind of use extra models is a warlord trait.
It's a warlord trait that also it has. Oh, it lets you. I believe it lets you deny the witch once.
That doesn't, yeah, because like I'm 2 more models doesn't sound like a full sentence for a warlord trait. The thing that also pops up here is that the GW spoiled the Captain Commander trait for Terminators, Unstoppable Destroyer, where you pile in and consolidate an extra inch, but you have to stay in combat. But you don't need to go in like normal directions. So you could like heroically intervene into a fight and then kind of just like wander over to an objective that's 8 inches away from where you started. And that's gross. Like he could end up very far away from where he's supposed to be and just like snag an objective that like your opponent was. If your opponent has this model, you have to play very carefully with your charges because he could just appear on one of your objectives if you have a fight that's like anywhere close to something that's important to you. You know the killiest thing, but like that's just going to ruin your primary for a turn, and that's oftentimes the difference between winning and losing a game.
So getting back to that warlord trait, confirmed. It denies a psychic power on a +1 and gives you counts as 2 extra models for holding objectives. Which,
okay,
well, no, I actually like that because Custodes have always wanted a little bit of a psychic defense. So like a warlord trait of just denying the witch is like even at a +1 isn't really worth taking, but like now that it's also giving you more object bodies, now we're talking about like worthwhile warlord trait.
Yeah, because people usually hold objectives with 5-man object units, and like a Custodes captain can kill one of those. Probably 2 to just take it.
Yeah,
but like the full 5 might be tricky.
In the shield host that I really like, I'm thinking about taking the Terminator captain with the Praetorian plate and then the warlord trait of half damage taken, and just 8 wounds of pure nonsense.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Yeah. Worth noting in the relic section, the relic of the any relic they gave a 3-up invuln now doesn't, and or if it does, it's only for 1 round.
How do you feel about that? Because T-Suns also have that. Their 3-up and 1 will save warlord trait became a once per game 3-up and 1 will save, and that's just kind of complete garbage. In my for T-Suns, but T-Suns are also a lot less interested in like throwing characters into combat. So how do you feel about the once per game 3-up and 1 will save? Is that something you're ever going to take, or do you think it's just not enough because it's only 1 turn?
So it also gives +1 wound.
Okay. Man, ours did nothing. Ours is just like once per game, 3-up and 1 will save. Be happy about it.
I don't think this is good enough to take. Because
Okay.
I think you have better baseline relics to take, and you're not spending like your first relic is probably always the Praetorian plate in my mind right now. Until I like play with it and find out somehow it's still bad.
It's also kind of awkward because like the +1 win thing, because my first mind is like I'd probably want to take that on a biker captain, but then that pushes him to 10 wounds, and then you can just shoot at him.
You actually can't take it on a biker captain.
Never mind. Carry on.
I could see it on the Blade Champion, because Blade Champions actually don't have they actually only have 3-up armor because they're wearing boots and not a bike. They're wearing boots and people can see them, thus they have 3-up armor.
Okay.
Makes sense.
Yeah. And that extra wound and being able to just pop it once while like, you're on your way and you might get exposed, but like a 3-up invuln can probably get you through a medium amount of shooting. I could see it being on him.
Okay. So do you want to talk a little bit about a list?
Yeah.
what does a list look
So-
like for this?
What do you think? Let's just like baseline. Like, what's a Custodes list look like?
So my level 1 Custodes list is the generic chapter of Fort, Feel No Pain, reroll a hit and a wound. Trajan as the Warlord. We'll get back to him in a second. The Terminator Captain with Unstoppable Destroyer and the Praetorian Plate. A Sisters of Silence HQ given they have a Warlord trait of enemy units within 3 inches lose OBSEC.
Gross.
Yep. 3 Sword and Board Custodian Guard. It's worth noting that the shields only give +1 save now. They no longer give A3 of Invul. 3 Sagittarium Guard with Mesocordio's. In case anyone's wondering, they do have core. Even if they didn't have core, I still think I would be taking them as a troop choice just because you want something to be more in the back, tending in the back. I could actually see this being split into 2 Sisters of Silence troop choices, just as a little bit more diversity, even if it does a little bit less throughout the game. Those Sagittarium Guard have Mesocordio's. A Vexilla with light cover and Terminator armor. Terminator armor only because it gives +1 wound and the gun, and there's really nothing else I could use those extra 10 points on. 2 Gladys pattern dreadnoughts, 3 Virtus Praetors with salvo missile launchers. Really quickly going back to Trajan, he still gives reroll hits and wounds of 1, but now it's only to core. Everything in this list except for the other characters are core.
Gotcha. I think I may have missed it. What were the 3 troop choices? It was 3 with sword and board.
2 units, 2 3-man sword and boards, and
Okay.
1
Gotcha.
unit of Sagittarium Guard.
I missed the
Might have
second
just
sword and board unit. That makes sense. Okay. Yeah, this seems sweet. And then it was 3 times 3 salvo launcher bikes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of also where I went to when you were like, oh yeah, they reroll hits and you can advance and shoot once per game. It's like, okay, well, that's everything hits on 2s, and you're gonna win most things on 2s. You roll a 6 dice, you probably only need to reroll 1 of them, and now we're just like very close to full rerolls in that unit.
Oh, actually, I misspoke about Trajan. Trajan's not reroll hits and wound rolls of 1 anymore. He's reroll all hit rolls and wound rolls of 1. He's just
Gotcha.
Gilman.
So if you got a penalty to hit, he can reroll your 2s.
Yeah. So
Sweet.
you take 3 salvo shots next to him, and you're going to reroll all your hits, and your wounds are going to reroll 1s and 1-2, and you're probably
Gotcha.
wounding on 3s. So you're just
Oh, yeah. I actually meant like if you just like on the turn where they can advance and shoot, if you just like jet them across the table outside of reroll range, like they actually don't need to reroll that many dice because they're succeeding on 2s or 3s for everything. They're 1 free reroll for that being that faction. Just like gross. Like that trait is so much better on a faction that hits on 2s with a bunch of high strength weapons.
Yeah, it is worth noting that Custodes now have 1 CP, give a dreadnought reroll hit rolls of 1 or wound rolls of 1 in an aura. So while 20 inches, the dreadnought might not be keeping up with that. Dreadnoughts do move, I believe, 9 inches. So like that 15-inch range to just like touch in and shoot across, you can do that.
Yeah, and like you can string with like the back bike back because then when the front guy makes the charge because of their bases, the back guy will get to fight.
Yeah.
Yeah, this sounds sweet. The bikes are funny. Like it's like your fast attack, but like this is your heavy support. This is the thing that goes and kills tanks. Also, I don't know if you mentioned, but the bikes have a new melee profile, don't they?
Yeah, strength 7, -3, 2 damage, and +1 to wound on the charge or heroic intervention.
4 attacks?
Yes, 4 attacks, but 5 wounds. They went up a wound.
Ooh, okay. Man, that makes them so ridiculously tanky. Okay.
It's worth noting that Custodes have a bunch of like transhuman and unspears aspects all key off of like 3 or less models. There's some that like look at 4 models randomly, but like if you're at 3, you can pretty much use all of the Custode strats at 1 CP.
Gotcha. because you're a little sad in the world of -1 damage. But a lot, with the exception of like the Crusher Stampede, a lot of those things have either no or very bad and vulnerable saves. And then the spike unit is just crunching them with those missile launchers. Can you fall back and shoot?
1 CP, yeah.
So you can just like hold things in combat too.
Only units with fly.
Sure, the bikes. But yeah, the non. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I also like that. Like this is Custodes how I always kind of imagined them. Like every Custode list I played against competitively at like anything other than like the first round or like the 0-1 table is just like a bunch of tanks. Here's like 2 to 3 Telemons and maybe a couple Caladiuses, some Gladises, and like some characters. And like just like in sword and board, make it 2. And you just like you don't see bikes, you don't see Terminators, you don't see like cap characters other than Trajan. And I think like all of those things are probably viable right now. Because for maybe I don't know about the Terminators. I haven't heard anything that makes me think I want to play a Terminator other than a captain yet.
Do they still have Unleash the Lions as a stratagem?
They do. You don't do it. So Terminators can come in one-man squads now.
Okay.
So you can just take a Terminator for 65 points to air quotes do things. I don't know what necessarily those things are, but
oh god, because it doesn't count for anything in the next mission pack.
Nope.
You run him at your opponent's objectives. He's 2 obstacle models. You never know.
That's about it, probably.
65 points for something that like actually chopped and bop and like can't just be blinked down with insignificant shots. Like you can just kind of like threaten the backline for 65 points. Like, yeah, he needs to make a 9-inch charge, but like your opponent has to play around him making that 9-inch charge. He has 2 object bodies.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like if I'm willing to pay 65 points for 2 Chaos Spawn to do the same thing, like I'd absolutely do that with 1 Terminator.
And it also feels just like with the thing where you can double shoot your weapons for a turn. This doesn't solve all of your anti-horde issue. Oh man, but between that though and the thing where you get +1 attack, like you just have the ability to clear hordes that you didn't have before, and this frees you up to like take the melta guns instead of the hurricane bolters on the bikes. Yeah, I like all of this. This is sweet. Also think that those lists you proposed was like pretty good. I'm gonna try and convince you to put a Caladius into it, but you might be right that like the bikes are just better.
I could see the Caladius actually. So Chris, do you know what Trajan does now?
What does Trajan do now?
All right. So Trajan actually has a 3 damage axe. That's the most important thing to note first. He's at 8 wounds, basic custode stat, 6 attacks, 8 wounds. He lost his 3-up invuln, but he got a 5-up fill no pain. When he's in your army, he must be your warlord, and he gets 2 warlord traits. His warlord traits are there's like each one of them has 2 parts. I'm just going to list all the parts together. It's he can reroll hit rolls. He can heroic defeat 6 inches. You can switch up the order of your katas. And 5-up CP regen.
This is a lot.
And he rerolls all hits and wound rolls of 1 for core within 6 inches of himself. And his moment shackle now says you can fight twice or interrupt, or the first time when you would take damage from an attack, you can treat the attack's damage as 0.
This is once per game for one of those effects?
Yeah.
Sweet.
How many points do you think he has?
Oh gosh.
What would you pay for that? He's also 2 object bodies.
I would say probably around like 180.
170.
All right, that was pretty close.
Chris, I think you're insane because that's a 200-point model, but okay. That being said, I think I'd pay 200 for that.
Yeah.
That's just like a lot. He's a good leader, but also when you need him to go out and just like murder something in combat, he can do that.
You
Well,
also,
I mean, I
like,
agree. Like that's probably closer to like a 200 point model, but like I feel like at 200 that you could probably like make an argument for another thing. At 180, it's a must take.
Yeah. There's certainly a lot of customization you can do with a non-named shield captain, so like he might lose out to some of those, but I feel like he's probably gonna make it into this list. Oh, how does he interact with like faction traits? I assume he just like he doesn't get one, he doesn't break it.
oh boy, I actually don't know that off the.
I'm gonna work under the assumption that he doesn't get one, he doesn't break it. We'll find out when the next weekend.
Oh, he gets the shield host tag. Yep.
Oh, he just has the tag?
Yeah.
Oh. All right. This is very good.
Lore wise, that's actually correct because he's the captain general because he leads all of them. And
all right, so he will get his one free reroll on his attacks. Is okay. Yeah. All right.
Okay then.
So Kevin, I'm fairly impressed with the stuff you've run us over, but you still think overall this faction is just worse, just because of the defensive stuff that they've lost.
that I mean, like, let's just like talk about this list into like Crusher Stampede, right? So like, this is like the best list I've put together. So let's talk about like into certain matchups. Like, so Crusher Stampede, all your melee is kind of a joke.
Yeah.
With the exception of your Dreadnought melee, and even then, it's like it feels a lot worse, and you only have 2 good Dreadnoughts. Your shooting's actually pretty good on the bikes, but you don't have enough defensive strats to protect all your bike units. So unless you're like sending them out in waves, your opponent will just, like, you think about like raiders or any anti-tank, like they'll go to shoot into one and then they'll start shooting into the other and kill the other.
Yeah. I do agree that Crusher Stampede is like your nightmare matchup. Like everything's -1, like literally everything's -1 damage, except for perhaps the Hive Guard that you can't see, which will annihilate your bikes before you can even move them. Like this seems bad. I 100% agree with you. But is your matchup of like the Caladius list, like, or like the Talamon Caladius list, like better in the Crusher Stampede? Like you take their shooting better, but I feel like the second like Hydra will start touching Dreadnoughts, it's really bad for you.
I actually just think the Crusher. I think the Crusher Stampede, partially due to the fact that they can just do 6 mortal wounds on the charge.
Yeah.
It kind of makes the matchup like unwinnable.
No, that matchup sounds like a. But in terms of like other matchups, I think you're in an okay place.
What do we consider the other top tier factions right now?
Orcs, Grey Knights are good. Maybe they're not top tier right now though.
Sorry, obviously.
The other Tyranid list, Thick City. Okay. There are 2 diametrically opposed Tyranid lists, and they're both tier 1. It's great.
I would say Thick City is like another place. So,
man, it really just comes down to if there's -1 damage across the board, it's probably bad for you. Man, Orcs do the same thing. The buggy list is just all -1 damage with invulnerable saves. The Speedwell list.
Yeah.
Can handle all the Orc DACA.
So nice thing about the Orc buggy list, if we're talking like the freebooters version, you're probably not getting the +1 popped actually that early at all.
Yeah.
You do get some durability in that regard.
I also think that like your footprint's tiny. Like your models, like you just don't have that many models. Like it's pretty easy to just literally hide an entire custode list. And now, unlike before, you're fast enough that you can just like hide your whole list and then come out to play later on.
Here's the thing. Sometimes a Wazboom Boss eject comes around a corner and just nukes a custodian guard with shields, and sometimes it doesn't.
Well, doesn't it? It's only AP3, right? Aren't you just making 3-up saves against it? Because you're going to use the Vexilla for cover.
Fair. I guess yeah. Insert Sagittarium Custodes, making my list weaker.
That's fair. You can just like deep strike them or something, right?
That's fair.
But yeah, okay, I agree. I think this book is good. I also like don't know that like the old Custode list had a good matchup against this. Like, I just don't think that like Talmons and Caladiuses had a good time at all into the nonsense that was the Orc list. So I don't know if this is like worse, but I guess we're kind of this whole argument's kind of pedantic. I still think this book is good, but it's not as good as like our boogeymen in the meta. But also, nothing should be that good because we have some armies that need to get toned down.
Yeah, so like I'm one for like buffing things so that they're on par instead of like nerfing everything. I preferred like that style of game design, but I don't think buffing everybody to the current Shikari power level is good.
No, I think Crusher Stampede was like a huge mistake. So like, I don't mind giving the durability because that was what the monsters were lacking. I think you can give them the durability without it just like breaking everything. I don't think you can give the Forge World ones like, oh, I'm 18 wounds at T8. I guess I get an invuln and -1 damage all of a sudden.
For less than 300 points.
Yeah, that's too much of a buff. You tell me a Trigon that's like T6 and 12 wounds and can die to bolter shot still. That's fine.
It's like an Imperial Knight, except that its firepower is about equal to an Imperial Knight. Its damage output is a million times better than the damage output of an Imperial Knight in melee. It's also more durable, and it's like a third of the point cost. Also has better strats. Sometimes it heals. Sometimes it moves 24 inches before it charges. Like, my goodness, GW? Come on.
Yeah.
It's funny because the Crusher Stampede rules came out. I was just like, oh yeah, this is sweet. These are cool things. I was really into it, and I just didn't put together that like, oh, it's like because like Trigons are awesome now. It's like, yeah, Trigons are awesome, but like higher duels are.
Yeah. I think I also think the Crusher Stampede's fine in a world where you didn't just print the Leviathan supplement, because now the Leviathan supplement has, all my guys are OBSEC, and their number of models equal to their wounds. So it's just all of a sudden, just like you have this one model that's 12 OBSEC bodies, and just like a lot of factions just can't put 12 OBSEC bodies like on a point that easily while fighting it, while scrapping over it. That's just not how a lot of armies can play. I don't know. There are some stratagems in the Crusher Stampede that I really like upgrading tiered warriors to actually have like good stat line. That's great. The psychic powers I like. There's just like one or two stress I just like I don't know who thought these were okay. I don't know why they. I think there should have been a cap of like monsters with under 14 wounds.
And thus ends our Tyranid review. I'm kidding.
Sorry.
It's all good. I do think that the Crusher Stampede certainly colors the meta a bit. But that being said, I'm not a Custode player. I'm pretty happy with where the Custode book is, as someone who has many friends who play Custodes. I think it's more interesting. I think there's more options, and I don't think that it's problematic.
I think from a game design standpoint, it's pretty solid.
Yeah, I consider it. I think from a power level perspective, like Pack Plus, Pack. The problem is like I actually don't.
System is we've at some we used to use letter grades. Now we've swapped to is that Art of War's system?
I thought that's what we used.
I think our last tier list, that's what we used, where it was like
I thought we used letters. Okay, never mind.
It was like S tier, and then it was like the like it went like the best, the pack, and then like trash tier, and then there was like pack plus and like pack minus.
Okay, all right.
I think the answer is there's not a lot of factions in pack plus anymore. on a whole meta perspective. I think you have a lot of factions that are playing reasonable games against each other. And then you have the S tier factions.
Yep, I agree.
And I don't think this is an S tier faction, so it's fine in the tier that it's in, but it's not a top tier army.
For sure. I have at least one game with Genestealer Cults scheduled for next week. I'm going to try and get a couple more in, because if you thought Custodes rules got complicated, oh boy. We're going to definitely talk about that next week, and I'll have a couple games under my belt so that we can actually have some a little bit more of a feel for how the army runs.
Sounds good. I'm looking forward to it. I really like to be convinced to start this army.
Yeah, you could be my second game. Schedule it. Figure it out.
I mean, I'm at the very least playing an RGT next weekend, so.
Oh, fair enough.
All right.
All right, shall we call it there?
Yeah, let's call it there. Yeah, I think that was a pretty solid first show back of the new year. Let's keep that energy going throughout the rest of the year, and let's see, we're at episode 70, so we'll hit
It's
episode
been going. It's
100
been going.
soon.
Yeah, we'll figure out how to celebrate that one.
Yeah.
Chris, I want to thank you for all the extra pixels today. You got me a new webcam for Christmas. Actually, I think it was not even technically for Christmas. I think you got it like 3 weeks beforehand, and I didn't.
Yeah, no, I ordered it like the first week of December because there was like a lightning deal on Amazon. So I was like, oh, okay, I'll just order this and just send it to Kevin's house. And then Kevin just like texts me like 3 days before Christmas, like, oh, hey, thanks for the webcam. I was like, dude, I sent it to you like 4 weeks ago.
Okay. In my defense, I got a bunch of Amazon packages all in a row, and I just assumed that it was one of the Christmas gifts I had gotten someone else.
And all right, guys. So just a heads up, we're still on air. Chris, wanna?
Yes. All right. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Like and subscribe, all that jazz. There's like a ring the bell thing somewhere.
There is a ring the bell.
Yeah, it's good for the algo. So until next week, don't roll any ones.
Bye, everyone.